The story behind the nose job actually came from writer Peter Melman, who I actually am very intrigued by the stories he tells in the Inside Look, which is, of course, definitely one of them is from the ideas that came from the Hamptons, which we'll get to that later on. Keep foreshadowing and keep talking about what I'm more excited to talk about. But the nose job was a solid episode. I liked it. But the main story behind the nose job came from Peter Melman, who has a friend whose father works in the jewelry department, and the guy was not afraid to basically speak, make like a not so friendly comment, but it was true. Like, he wouldn't be afraid to, tell, a customer, say, you're a very pretty girl. With how good looking you are, you should get your nose fixed. And his friend would tell his dad, like, Dad, you can't say stuff like that. And he goes, hey, believe me, they'll thank you, and they'll come back later and they'll thank me for it, basically. So that's what kind of, was suggested, the main story. George was dating this girl who was temporarily living with Elaine at the time, who, was beautiful, obviously out of his league, but the one thing that stood out about her was the fact she had a very large nose, which would be, a pretty good George story. So to recap the episode, at the beginning of it, Jerry and George were down in that one, little area, just shop for some cheap stuff. Basically an outdoor dollar store, basically it was. Just like a little shop on the block and whatnot. But Jerry was first talking about the girl he had met on the elevator. On an elevator he met, and then just some weird, chit chat, and then led to her giving him her number. And then George, he points out to George that he had a piece of spinach in his teeth, which George realized he had stuck in his teeth while he had an interview. And then Jerry was like, oh, don't worry about it, you got Audrey, which, quite frankly enough, the last time we seen George, he was wanting Elaine. How Elaine resolved her, joke and her, misleading, sexual desires the guy's desire for her is beyond me at this point, but George is now dating Audrey. So of course, they all have pizza later in Jerry's apartment, and Kramer's with them. And Kramer, of course, starts, which in a deleted scene, they actually, because at the end of the scene when they're down in the little area or whatever you want to call it, the ladies meet up with the pizza and they go upstairs. But Kramer's down out the window again trying to get Elaine's attention. He has a plan for the jacket, which he's been talking about off and on the past 3 episodes. The first time was back in the cafe when he mentions how this guy wants this jacket that he left at his mother's place 2 years ago, and of course he had to give the jacket up, and then in the tape, he finds out that the guy was arrested for mail fraud. So, Kramer now has this plan where he wants Elaine to go to the guy's apartment and pose as the guy's daughter, and Kramer will pose as her fiance, because the landlord's never met the daughter, but she's going to say she came to get the jacket. She wants to take it to him while visiting him in prison. Which that's a little bit of a later bit, but basically they're discussing that plan. And then they start talking, and then Audrey makes some comment like it's amazing how beautiful women there. She's originally from Baltimore, but she said she'd make it a place depending on how things go with her and George. But she said it was amazing how many beautiful women there are in New York, and she mentions I think also because Jerry was telling of all the story about him and Isabelle, but Audrey claims that it's very intimidating with how many beautiful women are there in New York. Kramer goes, hey, you're just as pretty as any of them, just need a nose job, that's all. Again, just like Peter Melman's friend's dad, and obviously she was taken back by it, but George, who completely agrees, and then Elaine basically tells off Kramer for doing that. Later on, back at Elaine's apartment, George is sitting there with Elaine on the couch, and basically George, unintentionally, slowly eases Audrey to decide to get the nose job. Elaine's not crazy, thought George was very, cruel about it, but Audrey decided that, you know what, yes, I want to go through then get a nose job while she's here in New York. Um, Meanwhile, Isabelle, the woman who Jerry was dating, Jerry is loving the sex with her. Unfortunately, outside of that, he can't stand this woman because she's an actress, and all she wants to do when she comes over, besides fool around, is have Jerry read these weird plays that Jerry has absolutely no interest in. So he literally begs Kramer to rip up her number just so he can't be tempted to call her ever again, and which Kramer is proud of him. Unfortunately, later on, Jerry misses the sex, as he described it. His genitals and his brain were like playing a chess game, it felt like. Well, his genitals started to dominate, and he basically begged Kramer back for the ripped up pieces and give him back the number, which Kramer is disappointed in, and he calls her back. And eventually, they do another play, and then at the same time, Jerry's looking behind him, and there's like a Jerry with a brain in his head, and then Jerry with, a man's genitals on his head, basically going at it in a chess game, and the brain wins, and finally Jerry basically just like tells this girl, Isabelle, it ain't working out. But back to the main plot, though, Audrey gets the nose job. They all go back to Elaine's apartment where Audrey was getting ready to take off the bandages, which the doctor said she could do. George is, of course, very excited about this. She takes it off, and, of course, everybody's trying to be nice, and B was like, it looks good. Yeah, very well done. Then Kramer, again, not afraid to speak the truth, go, you've been butchered, and George faints. So Audrey rushes to the doctor, which Kramer talks her into going to her doctor, and there was just something that didn't go right that was just causing like a huge dent in her nose. But of course, George, while she's trying to talk to George about, them going on a trip together, George basically is like, don't worry about me, you can go on your own. Basically leads to Audrey breaking up with George. But then also, we have the scene where Kramer and Elaine go to that guy's apartment to try to get that jacket back. And Elaine's not crazy about it, but the only reason why she was doing it because Kramer took Audrey to the hospital. And of course they had to put the ring on. And behind the scenes in that scene, Julia Louis-Dreyfus could not get through that scene without busting out laughing, which was aggravating Michael Richards. Again, and many times it's been mentioned that Michael Richards was not a fan of breaking character at all, and getting the giggles and everything. He actually was like getting very frustrated with Julia, and he actually says, I'm gonna get a 5x4 and clock you with just jag around it. But no matter what happened, the more angrier he got, the more Julia started laughing even more. But in the scene, again, like I said, Elaine was posing as the guy's daughter, and Kramer was posing as Mr. Peter Von Notten, or whatever the heck his name was, which he used several times in a couple other episodes down the line. That was like a name he used to cover up for what he was really doing. They go there, then the landlord starts talking trash on Babs Kramer, which was Kramer's mom, which apparently ends with Kramer trying to go after the guy, but they were able to still escape with the jacket. So Kramer, they're sitting in Monk's, they're wearing the jacket, and then Audrey walks in, and she got her note, she went to see Kramer's doctor, and the nose got fixed. And then Kramer leaves with Audrey. They go to some type of like a gala together or something like that. So now it looks like Audrey now has the hots for Kramer, which was of course awkward. I don't know why George didn't go to Kramer, but it's whatever because girlfriends disappear off the screen left and right. But earlier in the episode, though, after the nose didn't come out well for the nose job, they're sitting there and George is going on and on like, well, this and this, and then Elaine's like, George, shut up. Because, George was the one who basically talked her into getting the nose job. And then at the end, when Elaine's like saying how beautiful Audrey looks, how breathtaking this is that, which, it was true. George just goes, Elaine, shut up. And Elaine's like, okay, not bad comeback there. And that's how the show ended. It's a solid episode. I definitely I didn't like it as much as like the tape or even the parking garage, but it was still a solid episode. Very good. George story, just very big. Dumb luck. Obviously, that nose was a distraction, but everything else about her was just great, even though she was completely out of his league. But then, of course, it comes back to bite him again. Again, the whole idea of dumb luck just continues to happen for these characters. But that's the nose job. In the next episode, one of the series' famous lines of "These pretzels are making me thirsty" makes appearance in the next episode we talk about as well, which is another pretty good one as well. Don't like it as much as the tape, but definitely I feel another underrated episode, but still a little more well known because of that one famous line: "These pretzels are making me thirsty." So with that, guys, that'll do for my review of Seinfeld's The Nose Job. What are your thoughts on The Nose Job? Make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content to my channel. Follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirboy93. Until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll see you all later. Have a great rest of your night. And peace out, everybody.